I'm going to just, what I'm doing here is like a sampling. You know, you go to a restaurant, you get the sample plate of all these different things. So I'm giving you a sampling of some of the different approaches to defending the Church's teaching on contraception. I gave you a bit of what was in John Paul II's Love and Responsibility, written in 1960. And it actually was a major influence on Humanae Vitae itself. Many of the concepts that are in Humanae Vitae were drawn from John Paul II's Love and Responsibility. As I mentioned, particularly this unique understanding of the phrase conscious parenthood, right? That sex leads to babies, and you need to know that. Humanae Vitae is a very rich document. It's only 35 pages, but it's much like reading Thomas Aquinas, you know. There's a whole lot there in any 35 pages. To really fill it out would take 350 at least, but it's a beautiful document and intelligible. People should read it. He didn't write it, Pope Paul VI did, but he drew quite a bit on the thought of John Paul II. These are the reasons given in Humanae Vitae that why contraception is wrong. I don't use the phrase intrinsically evil anymore because people think of anything that's evil as being like Hitler. That's about it. College students often, they don't know about Hitler anymore. They would think he was evil if they knew about him. They sort of think like parking in handicapped spaces and using the wrong gender pronouns are intrinsically evil. All right. And they don't understand how contraception could be intrinsically evil. It just doesn't work. It doesn't compute anywhere. So I use the phrase not in accord with God's plan for sexuality. And it's not that they understand the phrase, it just knocks them back a bit. What do you mean? God has a plan for sexuality, and that somehow contraception's not in accord with God's plan for sexuality? So they start to listen because it's a whole new concept to them. Intrinsically evil sounds like, you are very, very, very bad. God has a plan for sexuality. It's like, tell me, all right? So think about that when you use words. It's a violation of the good of a woman's physical and psychological health. That's one of the reasons that it violates God's plan for sexuality. He didn't mean sexuality to be an opportunity for doing harm to women. I'll explain that in my next talk. It's an impediment to the total self-giving of spousal love. We've talked about that a bit. I really actually don't like to use the word having sex for couples who are married. Outside of marriage, saying having sex is just fine because it's kind of meaningless. Within marriage, again, there's some beautiful old show tunes, you know, it's making love, making whoopee actually, but making love, right? Making love. And that's a beautiful phrase, making love. And that there's something that enters a negative note into the sexual act when you use contraception. You're not giving completely of yourself. I'll explain a little bit more about that. And it's rejection of God as a creator of new life. Now, this is a very important concept that a lot of couples, when they understand it, they have such an elevated understanding of sexual intercourse. Again, in our culture, sex is just sex. It's an act of physical pleasure. In the Catholic Church, it's really a sacramental act. It's huge, right? It's the holy. The holy is present in the act of spouses making love, not of people having sex outside of marriage. But within marriage, it is a kind of an invitation to God to create a new human life. Right? You don't always want to issue that invitation for various reasons, and we'll talk about that. God made that possible. But you don't want to say, God, I invite you by having sex, and then I disinvite you by using contraception. This is a very important concept. It's permeated, in a sense, in Humanae Vitae, that God creates every human soul, right? The sperm does not have an immortal soul, and the egg does not have an immortal soul. They both die quickly and go nowhere, right? They are living things. A sperm is a living thing, and an ovum is a living thing, but they do not have an immortal soul. When sperm meets egg, it now, for human sperm and human egg, there comes to be an immortal soul. Well, the sperm doesn't bring it. It is not immortal. The egg doesn't bring it. It is not immortal. Something new has to happen, and only God can create something that's immortal. So God creates the immortal soul and infuses the sperm and the egg with an immortal soul. So when couples are engaging in its active sexual intercourse, making love, we hope, the male provides the sperm, the female provides the egg, and God provides the human soul. And we have a new little human being who God wants the parents to be basically godlike to those children. God loves us in an unconditional way, right? An absolute unconditional way. And that's what God wants parents to be, that kind of loving figure to their children. I'll love you. I'll always be here for you. I love you simply because you exist, right? You don't have to you don't have to be the prom king or the quarterback or the head cheerleader. None of that. I love you because you exist, because you're mine, and that you're something that your father and I or your mother and I did with the help of God, right? So the problem with contraception is it thwarts God's life-giving power, right? A couple who's engaging in an active sexual intercourse that might be fertile, are putting a barrier, not necessarily a physical barrier, but some of them are physical barriers, contraceptives. And that's a fascinating phrase itself. I have to get my barrier in place, right? You think, whoa, interesting, right? Or you use a spermicide, something that kills the sperm. That's a very sweet thing to say to someone you're making love with. First, I've got to get my spermicide going to kill any sperm that come my way. There's a rejection there. And so it's also rejection of God. It's saying we want to engage in this great pleasurable act that you gave us to enjoy, but we don't allow you to achieve what you wanted to achieve through the sexual act. He also does want to achieve, of course, that the two bond through love in this act. And the church teaches, Humanae Vitae teaches, if you violate the procreative meaning, you also violate the unitive meaning. You're not being as loving as you can. Again, first line of Humanae Vitae. As I intimated earlier, I retranslated Humanae Vitae. That's a very presumptuous, hubristic kind of thing to do. I can translate it better than it's been translated before. The problem is that the translations that existed before mine are all based on the Italian text, whereas Latin is the official language of the church. And when I started, because my degree actually is in classical languages, there were certain passages I wanted to see what they said in the Latin because I thought I might get at the meaning better when I was reading it. And I went back to the Latin text. And the way that it was translated, the English translation, that can't come from the Latin because no Latinist would translate the passage that way. And that's how I learned that it wasn't translated from the Latin. It was translated from the Italian. And some words are very important. So as a prelude to that, the previous translation of the very first line says, God has entrusted, I've got this automatic thing in there. How lovely. God has entrusted to spouses the very serious duty of transmitting human life. Now, most of us don't, duties are kind of negative things. It's like taking out the trash and paying your income tax. And this is a very serious duty of transmitting human life. I looked at the Italian word was dovere, which means duty. Fine translation of the Italian. Serious, so whatever the word is for serious was there. I can usually do this, but in that Latin, the word for very serious duty was gravissimum munus. Now, any of you know Latin. The word munus is a word that you kind of get excited about, right? It's got a lot of different nuances and connotations. It really means a great gift. Munus is a great gift, and it's a great gift that comes with it with very big, ennobling responsibilities. It's like the president asking someone to be a secretary of state. And you would say, oh my gosh, what a great munus. Thank you. You gave this to me as an honor, as something you trust me to be able to do well. And again, by doing it, I will serve a great cause. And that's what it means. So I use the word mission to translate munus. I don't know if it's the best translation. It's what I came up with. But read this instead. God has entrusted to spouses the extremely important mission of transmitting human life by which they offer a service to God. All right? The usual translation is just sort of like do what you're supposed to do. Transmit human life. The other is, I'm giving you this great mission by which you perform a service to me, says God. All right? Totally different perspective, again, on what sexual intercourse is. The word munus itself, again, this is a tidbit. I don't expect you to memorize this. I know you're going to be able to see. It's just beautiful the way it does it on its own. I think you're going to have access to this. You're taping it, and perhaps we can also just put up the slides as available to people. All right. Most of the slides, almost every slide that has any chart on it or graph, will, in the notes part of the PowerPoint, has the website on which I found it. So that will help you go to where the studies are, etc. The word, it means gift. As a matter of fact, in the Latin Mass, when the angels take the gifts to God, it's the munere, the gifts. It means a role or a task, what you're assigned to do in this world. Christ has the threefold munus of being priest, prophet, and king. When you hear that, when I wonder how I did that. Probably if I tried to do it, I couldn't do it. Okay, priest, prophet, and king. That's what he's supposed to be in this world. He's supposed to be a priest, prophet, and a king. That's what he's supposed to be. The Pope has the munus of infallibility. Mary has the munus of being the mother of God, and spouses have the munus of transmitting life, right? And I use the word mission for that. Okay, this has gotten out of control here. All right, there's got to be a way I can, okay. See, as I said, this is fascinating. The technical parts of my talk are fascinating. Everything's just fascinating. All right. Most of the documents of Vatican II have as a subtitle, De Munere, concerning the munus, concerning the mission of the laity, of the priesthood, of this, of that, what their job is in the world. Again, Christ has the threefold munus of being priest, prophet, and king. I already did that, Okay. That's not going anywhere. Good. So anyway, this whole vision in Humanae Vitae is that sexuality is a gift from God that allows spouses to love each other, and through that love to perform a service to God by bringing forth new human life, right? That God made the world in order to share eternity with human beings. And he could have made human life in all sorts of different ways. I say he did. He made man, get this here, he made males through mud. He used mud to make males. And for females, he used the rib of a rational creature, all right? Think about it, explains a lot, all right? Explains a lot. One man came up to me afterwards and explains why I'm treated like dirt a lot, he said. But God can create human life any old way he wants to. But he entrusted this mission, this task, this role to spouses, right? To spouses to help him create new human life. And so when spouses are engaging in active sexual intercourse, they are essentially inviting God to create a new human soul. The theology of the body, this man and woman, he created them, the theology of the body. John Paul II, in Love and Responsibility, John Paul II was providing a philosophical defense of the church's teaching on sexuality. Philosophy means that you look at the world and you think about it, and you observe it, and you try to discover what truths there are by observing the world as it is. Theology uses revelation. God tells us a lot that we could know if we thought about it long enough, and stuff that we can't know. It's beyond us, but God delivers that information to us. So in Love and Responsibility, he provides a philosophical defense for the church's teaching on sexuality. In Theology of the Body, he provides one based on Scripture. If you haven't studied the theology of the body, I highly recommend it. There's also, the book itself is hard to read. If you love reading hard stuff and working your way through something hard, do it. But there's wonderful books by Christopher West and others, good things online, videos, lectures. It's fascinating stuff. But he wants to figure out what God's plan is for sexuality by looking at Scripture. And he goes back to the beginning. He goes back to Genesis. He said in Genesis, God made man and he made woman. And he gave us instructions. First of all, he says that when we're made in the image and likeness of God, the tradition has always said that that means we're rational and we're free. When we're made in the image and likeness of God, it means we can think and we can make free choices. But John Paul II says it reveals maybe something even more important, that God is a Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And you might ask, what is God doing for all of eternity? What are they doing, this Trinity, right? It's a big question. Some people must think it must be boring. It must be boring to be in heaven because you're singing Alleluia all the time. Praise the Lord. So what are they doing all the time? Well, they're doing pretty much what we do at some of the most important moments of our lives. Most people love Thanksgiving and they love Christmas because their family comes together. Their family comes together. You get to love everybody. You love them all, and you want to hear what's going on with them. You especially want to celebrate any accomplishments they have, right? You hope they don't have any sorrows, but if they do, you want to share them. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit don't have sorrows. So what they're doing all the time, excuse me, is celebrating their love. They're celebrating their love for each other and their accomplishments. Look what we did today. Look what our people did today. Look what our creation did today. So, excuse me. And I might have to I have a little scratchy throat. So I hope it's not difficult for me to talk over this little lubrication, but it might prevent some of the coughing. Anyway, so we're made in the likeness and image of God. We're meant to be lovers, not just rational and free. Our very bodies show that we're meant to be lovers. Male is made for female, and female is made for male. Our very bodies show us that we're not complete in ourselves. Does anybody have a lozenge? This is just candy. If anybody has a little lozenge, that would be beneficial. So we're meant to love and be loved. The body shows that, all right? And it means that we're... Thank you. Might you all say a prayer that I stop coughing? Okay. Oh, more. She gave me 3, now I have 4. This should get me through. Oh, thank you. Alrighty. The paper sticking. It's almost there. Maybe I could sing it. I think with singing I don't cough as much. We're made for love. We're made to love and be loved. There you go. That works. Okay. So the love and responsibility talks about the spousal meaning of the body. Our bodies show that we're meant to be in relationship with the opposite sex, a relationship that's unifying, affirmative, and life-giving. So we're made in the image and likeness of God. God is a Trinity, a communion of persons, a communion of lovers. The persons are to be a communion of lovers. We are to love and be loved. The very makeup of our bodies shows that we are to be in union with others. And this is true for the unmarried as well as the married. Our bodies show that we're meant to be oriented towards giving towards others. The church definitely teaches about spiritual parenthood. I mean, you look at priests and nuns. I mean, they are living lives of complete self-giving to others. They're not married, but they're living lives of complete self-giving. Marriage is another kind of complete self-giving. The language, it talks about the language of the body. The tradition of the church has always talked about the purpose of the sexual act. Humanae Vitae and the Theology of the Body talk about the meaning of the sexual act rather than the purpose, right? Meaning is a word that's associated with language. You speak something. So what it's basically saying, and he's very explicit about this in the Theology of the Body, is the body speaks a language, all right? And the act of sexual intercourse says something, just like a kiss does or a handshake does. You're conveying a certain meaning to this person, that you're glad to meet them, or a kiss on the cheek, you're more glad to meet them, or you hit them. You're conveying a meaning. You trip them. You're conveying a meaning. Right? Your body conveys a meaning. Right? It means, among other things, the act of sexual intercourse certainly should mean these things. That it's inherent in the act, and if you don't mean these things, you're lying with the act. I find you attractive. Sexual intercourse says, I find you attractive. I want to share great pleasure with you. I want a total life commitment with you. That's because it has the procreative possibility. I want to make a complete gift of myself to you. Again, speaking the truth of the body means I want to be a lover to you and to be a life giver with you. Now, this can mean sexual intercourse. This can mean the spousal meaning of the body that speaks its truth. Spousal meaning, you're married. That act of sexual intercourse should always mean I want to be a lover to you and to be a life giver with you. Right? Now, it doesn't mean every act you're intending to have a child. The church permits abstinence during the fertile time and having sexual intercourse during the infertile time. But it means I'm never going to close God out. I'm not going to do something to my body that will render it infertile. My body is, for women, most days of the month is actually infertile. The body is infertile most of the time. We didn't make ourselves infertile. God made us infertile most of the days of the month. And he's told us you can have sex all month long. Go ahead, good thing. I want you to affirm each other. I want you to love each other. I want you to share great pleasure with each other. But I don't want you to close me out of this relationship. It's like having a party. Sex is like having a party. And God says, when you have sex during the fertile time, I want to be invited to the party. If you use contraception, you're saying, we're going to have a party, but you aren't invited. Well, you're having sex during the infertile time. It's like saying, God says, I'm not, it's not that I'm not there. I'm always there where there's love. But the life-giving part of it, I've decided to stand back for a while. It's my choice to stand back during that infertile time. You didn't send me away. You aren't shutting me out. I've decided I'm giving you these days of the month. Your woman's body needs a relaxation. She can't have as many babies as she can possibly bear. The fact is in paradise, Adam and Eve would have had sex because that's what their bodies were made for. And every act of sexual intercourse likely would have resulted in a baby. They wouldn't want to have sex during the rest of the time, but we do. Or it would have been perfectly measured in some way. Couldn't have had more babies than they could have taken care of. That wasn't the nature of paradise. Everything's off kilter after the fall. And so now we have to be more careful about enjoying the act of sexual intercourse. If we're not prepared to be parents, though we're married to each other, if a baby come, we could deal with it. But it doesn't really fit into the well-being of our family at this point. God says, I respect that. I've given you this opportunity. All right. The fact is that the act of sexual intercourse outside of marriage says something. It says, I want to have sex with you. And this picture represents that. It's a male and female who are scantily clad. No, they're not scantily clad. They're sensuous. They're sensuous. They're faceless. It's all about the physical sensation. There's nothing there about making a personal connection. The face is not there. It's all about the body. Whereas those who are married to each other and are having sex, their acts of sexual intercourse says, I want you to be the father or the mother of my children. As I said, that phrase itself is a marriage proposal. I tell my young friends, I said, if someone comes up to you and says, I want to have sex with you, I said, don't be too impressed. That they could say that to a lot of people. They're just trying to find out if you're available. They probably do find you attractive, but there's no commitment written into that act. But if someone says, I want you to be the mother of my children or father of my children, it says, fall over. That's a marriage proposal, right? That's an incredible thing. So Contraceptive sex says, I want to have sex with you. Non-contraceptive sex, understood, conscious parenthood, means I want you to be the mother of my children. Okay, these are 2 books that I have written. There's a whole other set of books here that I have in this rest of this PowerPoint, which Jackie will get to you somehow. Now where's my other one? Oh, tech guy. Where do I find it? In here. Oh, these are all mine. Oh, it's going to be easy if I can. You want to listen to all these talks? A lot of them here. All right. Green sex is best, Canada, right there. All right, here we go. Green sex is best. I have the same talk with about 40 different titles. Right? This is one of the many titles. I came up with this title because I was in Boulder, Colorado. One of your speakers is from Boulder, Colorado. And I had so much fun saying my green friends, because green means you care about the environment. It's way high in your values. And so I'm trying to show them that contraception is not green sex, it's chemical sex, right? Natural family planning is green sex. It uses no chemicals, harms the environment, not at all. And it's not only the environment, meaning nature out there, trees and rivers, etc. It's also a woman's delicate ecological environment that she lives with that you're doing damage to. So green sex is one that respects the environment out there, but also respects the delicate ecological system that a woman's body is. One of the major problems here is our culture not only does it think that sex is just sex, they think the body is just a body. It's just something that I have, all right? And I can do with it whatever I want to. I can change my sex, for instance. I can use contraception. I can chop off an arm if I want to. People do that. Crazy people who have no disease in an arm sometimes get them amputated because they're what are called amputee wannabes. Aptophilia, they call it. So we think we should be able to do anything we want to with our bodies. We don't really realize our body is a part of our identity. I'm not just Janet Smith. I'm Janet Smith, a female, all right? I'm a female. And that's very important to who I am. And when someone does something to my body, they do something to me. I mean, that's one of the reasons that rape is such a terrible thing. It doesn't violate just the body. It violates the person. And you read about these, again, sexual abuse crisis is so horrible that things that were done to small children last the rest of their life because their body and who they are intricately connected. The soul actually is in every part of my body. It's not just in my heart. It's not just in my brain. The soul occupies my whole body. And so anything that anybody does to my body, they do to me. When someone hits me, you don't say, don't hit my cheek. We say, don't hit me. You're hitting me, right? It's me that you've done this to, not just my, and we had, if someone were to rape me, I wouldn't say, you shouldn't do this to this part of my body. It shouldn't do this to me, right? So we have to understand that our bodies, that anything done to our body is done to ourself. Now, chemicals harm the environment and people, and we've come to be very dedicated to this. You know, the grocery stores are filled with organic food, and it's considered to be better to eat organic food, no chemicals involved. We want water that's coastal pure water. You can taste the difference. We want clean air days. We are opposed to having chemicals in our environment, all right? Now, I want to talk about the carbon footprint of contraceptives, all right? What do they do to the environment? Think of all the plastics involved with condoms. They are, in fact, non-biodegradable, which also are the hormones that are in any of the chemical contraceptives. They don't break down easily in the environment. Just a few facts. In 2008, 437 million rubbers, condoms, were sold in the United States. An official New York City condom weighs 0.1 ounces in the wrapper. So the total mass of used condom garbage should be around 2.75 million pounds or 1,365 tons. Condom wrappers are typically made of plastic or some kind of treated foil. Given that that condoms represent only about 0.001% of the 152 million tons of trash American households produce annually, it's a small portion of it, 0.001, and that we still need a lot of research into the precise effects that pharmaceuticals are having on our water supply, condoms seem to be the greener choice. So someone's trying to figure out which contraceptive is the most green, but does less harm to the environment. They say condoms, which are 18% ineffective, right? I'm not certain that's good for the environment, right? Because people are having babies outside of marriage that they aren't prepared to have, and the cost of that in so many ways is tremendous. So common sense, don't flush them. Latex is biodegradable but not in water. Female condoms are made of plastic and are not biodegradable. Foil wrappers are not biodegradable, and they're not reusable, but somehow they're the best, and they might be right. We have to think about all the environmental waste that comes with the condom and all the other contraceptives. Chemical sex means when you're having sex, you're including something that is putting chemicals in our body, or like condoms, chemicals into the atmosphere. So these are the very chemicals that come with contraceptive sex. Now, this is an incredibly important study, fascinating. It's been replicated all over the world. This is not just in Boulder, Colorado. It was delightful that this study was done in Boulder. But apparently fish can change their sex given what kind of hormones are in the water that they consume, right? They can change their sex. So it says here, deformities in fish cause concern. Research on Boulder Creek and the South Platte River has uncovered a disturbing problem. Some white sucker fish downstream from Denver and Boulder sewage plants have both male and female reproductive tissues. Researchers also found something else. Females far outnumber males. Now they want to know if chemicals that mimic the female hormone estrogen are to blame. Utilities that provide water to more than 24 communities from the South Platte don't test for the chemicals. Said biologist John Wooding, who discovered the gender-bending fish, "This is the only thing that has ever really scared me." They're talking about sewage plants, that upstream you should have clear water. Downstream you're going to have water that has absorbed the chemicals that we've put into the water. There's so much estrogen downstream that fish are changing their gender downstream. It gives us numbers here. The fish sampling results on Boulder Creek were also disturbing. Just below the sewage plant outflow pipe, the team collected 101 females, 12 males, and 10 intersex fish. 101 females, 12 males, and 10 intersex fish. Upstream of the sewage plant outflow, the team found 42 females, 37 males, and 0 intersex fish. Now, this has been discovered all over the world, London River and Africa, etc. Fish are changing their gender because of the number of hormones that are in the water supply. I've told the waters around Boston University are just massively female fish, because all the girls are taking chemical contraceptives, right? There's also other sources of estrogen. For instance, plastics have estrogen in them, and those are also polluting the water supply. Some people are beginning to think there's an enormous decline in male fertility. There's a very significant decline in the sperm count of males. And people are beginning to wonder that if the same effect that estrogen is having on fish, if it's having on males. Right? This is a very interesting book, Estrogeneration, how estrogenics are making you fat, sick, and infertile. Okay, this man's a scientist, much worth reading. Okay, early studies on the pill or on any contraceptives are almost always done in third world countries, right? Because those women don't have the facilities to sue the drug companies. So they do their testing in third world countries. A man named John Rock, Catholic, doctor at Yale University, was one of the first inventors of the pill. And he did all of his testing in Puerto Rico because it was poor Catholic women. And if he thought if he could get poor Catholic women to accept contraception, he'd be long down the path to getting the Catholic Church to accept contraception and others. The problem was that in the group that they tested in Puerto Rico, 3 women died from the first test case. This is how this was evaluated. This Dr. Edris Rice Ray was part of the doctors doing the testing, a faculty member of the Puerto Rico Medical School and medical director of the Puerto Rico Family Planning Association, was in charge of the trials. After a year of tests, Dr. Rice Ray reported good news to Pincus, another one of the collaborators. The pill was 100% effective when taken properly. She also informed him that 17% of the women in the study complained of nausea, dizziness, headache, stomach pain, and vomiting. So serious and sustained were the reactions that Rice Ray told Pincus that a 10 milligram dose of Enovid caused too many side reactions to be generally acceptable. You'll be surprised when you read, if you go and you look about the side effects of the pill and any one of the contraceptives, you'll say so many women died, and they find that to be an acceptable risk for the convenience of contraception, right? Rock and Pincus quickly dismissed Rice Ray's conclusions that it was too dangerous. Those are unacceptable consequences. Nausea, what were they? Nausea, dizziness, headache, stomach pain, and vomiting. Things like migraine headaches are a very common result of contraception. Most women say, those aren't really tolerable. She said they're not acceptable. Well, Rock and Pincus quickly dismissed their conclusions. Their patients in Boston had experienced far fewer negative reactions, and they believed many of the complaints were psychosomatic. All right? Oh my gosh. The men also felt that problems such as bloating and nausea were minor compared to the contraceptive benefits of the drug. I've probably experienced about 5 hours of nausea in my lifetime for various things, and I hated it. I would not call that something that was minor in respect as a side effect of something. Although 3 women died while participating in the trials, no investigation was conducted to see if the pill had caused the young women's death. Young women, healthy, died. Well, women can die suddenly. But 3, at the same time, they were all taking the pill. You got to look at it. Confident in the safety of the pill, Pincus and Rock took no action to assess the root causes of the side effects. 3 women died in the first test case of using contraceptives. In the 60s, as they still are, trying to find a male contraceptive, which largely means filling men with estrogen. Now, most men don't like that thought, all right? But that's how it works. And in the first test study of males, for contraceptive for males in the 60s, one male suffered some slight shrinkage of his testicles, and they decided to stop testing the male contraceptive pill because that was unacceptable. 3 deaths of women in Puerto Rico don't even provoke an investigation, all right, because it's an acceptable risk for the convenience. But one male suffering some slight shrinkage of his testicles, they stopped testing. It shows you how we value men and women, all right? And it's insane. Women should have been rushing Congress and telling them not to approve it. And you know what? They did. Women rushed Congress. They protested. They came and sat in the halls of Congress and said, you haven't done enough studies on this. You can't do this. This is bad for women. They said, oh, no. Of course, the drug companies saw, millions and billions is what they, in fact, have earned, all right? Quinacrine is no longer used. But it's a fascinating thing to me. Quinacrine is just some little pellet that can be, it was used for contraceptive purposes. It's a non-surgical, permanent method of sterilization by the synthetic anti-malarial chemical quinacrine. How does quinacrine act? They cost like 1-2 cents for a little pellet. You can put 6 or 7 or 8 of them in a woman's uterus, and she becomes sterile. How? When quinacrine pellets are inserted into the uterus through an intrauterine device, they dissolve. They form scars and block the fallopian tube to prevent fertilization. All right, that's a means of sterilization. How does it sterilize? It burns. It causes a lesion in a woman's uterus, and then when it heals, it leaves a scar. So when a new little human being tries to implant, it can't. Or when a sperm tries to get into the fallopian tube and go up to fertilize the egg, it's blocked because of a scar. Doesn't that sound brilliant? It costs only like 16 cents to sterilize a woman with quinacrine that causes lesions in her uterus, where there's a lot of bacteria, right, in which infections can easily happen and flare up, and a woman can die because of these quinacrine little pellets. These were used in India because it was so cheap. Too many people in India. So at a certain point, India bans use of quinacrine for sterilizations. The country had been the largest market. This is back in '98. Quinacrine, originally used as a malaria drug, has been used to chemically sterilize more than 100,000 women in about 20 developing countries. Such irreversible sterilizations aren't approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, are opposed by women's groups and the World Health Organization, which says quinacrine may cause cancer. And I'm just thinking, who sat around and thought this was a good idea, to put things in a woman's uterus that burn her uterus and cause scarring? It's off the market, but again, experimenting in third world countries, right? Exploiting women in third world countries. All right, female fertility 101, all right? Most of you know some of this, but let's just review it. A very good place to go is this website, Natural Womanhood. It talks all about the different contraceptives, women's experience with them, good articles, good everything. Most of the NFP sites are wonderfully informative about a woman's cycle. Most women don't know this. And I can't tell you how many doctors don't really know this. Simple stuff, Fertility 101. Right, this is a chart that shows a woman's fertility cycle in a given month. This woman has a 28-day cycle. Most women have variance because it's a fallen world. Eve would have had 28-day cycles, and every other woman would have had 28-day cycles, but we don't, because nutrition, the sun, the moon, all sorts of things. Women have basically 4 fundamental hormones that are associated with her fertility. On the top row, you see this is a luteinizing hormone and the follicular stimulating hormone that stimulates the fallopian tube in the ovary. And you'll see that at the middle of the month, there's a surge of those hormones, and then it goes down. Because a woman ovulates only once a month. The egg lives in her body for only 24 hours. It can be fertilized for only 12 hours. There's only a 12-hour window every month when a woman can get pregnant. And we see here in the second row, that's the ovum. And we're born with all the eggs we're ever going to have, all right? But they're not mature, all right? And we have the hormones help mature these eggs, ripen and release an egg every month. That's what the hormones do. And so mid-month, day 11, 12, 13, is the day when a woman, it's usually about day 13 or 14, when a woman ovulates. There's only a 12-hour period once this fully mature egg is released from the ovary. And if it doesn't get fertilized, it actually dies, right? It dies. She can't get pregnant. She can't possibly get pregnant for the rest of the month. The egg has come and the egg is gone, right? 12 hours a month that we can get pregnant. Why are we taking hormones day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year for something that happens only once a month. Well, can we figure out when that is? Well, yes, we can. Let's talk about that. But we'll go down to row 3. There are 2 other hormones, estrogen and progesterone, which help a woman provide an endometrium, which is the 4th row. That's the lining of the uterine wall. That all month long, at the same time that the egg is being ripened and released, the uterus is building up this endometrium lining that is going to be the new home for the new little human being for the next 9 months. And it's going to be something where you see all the little blood vessels there. It's a source of food and oxygen where the new little embryonic human being implants. And all month long, a woman's body is preparing for a pregnancy. So she gets pregnant, she has this nice endometrium where the new little human being can implant. Progesterone is the hormone that keeps a woman pregnant. Right? A lot of women who have miscarriages because they're low in progesterone. They can get progesterone shots that help them sustain a pregnancy. Dr. Tom Hilgers in Omaha is the one to consult. His doctors trained by him are all over the world, so you might find one in the local area. Now, the woman whose chart this is, you'll see at the same time that you have this surge of hormones that ripen and release the eggs. You have this estrogen that goes up because it's been preparing the endometrium, and there's a progesterone, so if there should be a new little human being, it's going to keep that endometrium in place. But this woman didn't get pregnant, so you'll see that the hormones all go down at the end of the month. She starts all over again. The menstrual period that women have is that endometrium that's being sloughed off that was prepared the month before. Now that goes away. She has a couple days of rest. You'll see at the left-hand side, you'll see the red on the endometrium, which is the bleeding. Then she goes down a little bit of a rest period, not that much of a rest period, and then her hormones shoot up again. Now you might notice here that a woman chemically is not the same person day to day. All right? We are different. We have a different, women in the fertility phase of their life, which is those, 14 to 49 or so for some of us. We're a different woman every single day, chemically speaking. We all know that, right? All married men know that. Someday the woman gets up that you're married to, most days, the sweetest, most charming, lovely woman you've ever met. And then there's a couple days of the month where she is just a complete shrew. And you're saying, how'd this happen? How'd this happen? This lovely, sweet person I married is now a shrew. I had a friend of mine that once a month had a huge fight with her husband. Dennis, you are a complete jerk. I don't know why I married you. And finally, Dennis said, Jane, it's not me, it's you. Three quarters of a month, I'm the most adorable person you've ever met in your life. And then I switch into being a complete jerk you wish you'd never married. He says, it's going to happen next month, the exact time. Let me put it on the calendar, and we'll see, we'll have this same interaction. It was a very valuable piece of information for both of them to have figured out. Okay? The thing about men, of course, the fluctuation in male sexual hormones in a month is this. Okay? So if he seems the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, steady, 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 same old guy, he is, right? And if we seem like, most of us don't know whether we're the sweetest person that's ever been born or a shrew until we've talked to some male. And that kind of lets us know where we are in our cycle, all right? Now this is a simplified chart that are used for women all over the world. It discloses some very important things. You'll notice that, the first part of the month, this chart is the first 14 days or so of the month. They're called dry days, like the sun represents dryness. There's the 4 bars that are when a woman's bleeding, and then there's these rest days where there's no egg there. There's no egg there. There's also none what they call fertile mucus, because fertile mucus helps carry the sperm to meet the egg, and that's why it represents dryness, because a woman doesn't have this wet sensation that the mucus creates. You'll notice in the middle of the chart, there's a phase where there's, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, where there's this rain, which represents the wetness of the fertile cycle. Fertile part of the cycle, the fertile mucus is present. But when the egg comes and goes when it dies. After that point, for the rest of the month, which is generally 12 days, it doesn't matter how long a woman's cycle is, the variability in days comes either in the first phase or the middle phase, but the 12 days at the end of the cycle are pretty much there for every woman. If she has a 19-day cycle or a 36-day cycle, she's going to have 12 days at the end of her cycle. The variability will be at the beginning. But so why do we have fertile days if a woman can get pregnant only 12 hours of a month? Why do we have the fertile phase more than 1 day of a month, which all those little human beings represent? Those are baby days, days that babies could be made. Well, the thing is, this fertile mucus has a purpose, and its purpose is to keep a sperm alive, millions of sperm alive, and carry them up the fallopian tube to meet the egg, the fertilized egg. Okay, supposedly the ones that are fastest and strongest are the ones that can get through, be carried up. So the fertile mucus can keep the sperm alive for up to 5 days. 5 days. So if a woman has sexual intercourse on a Monday, not Tuesday, not Wednesday, not Thursday, and ovulates on Friday, she might get pregnant from the active sexual intercourse she had on Monday, because the fertile mucus can keep the sperm alive that long. Now, it's only a 3% chance of having sexual intercourse on Monday that you'll get a sperm that's hardy enough to last until Friday. Even a woman who has sexual intercourse on the day that she ovulates only has a 43% chance of getting pregnant. It's not 100%, right? So women are relatively infertile creatures. We can get pregnant only in a small window, or medium window, 1/3 of the month at the most. We can get pregnant for only 20, 30 years of our life. What every male, honestly, given time, could populate China. That's how fertile males are. And that has something different with the energy level of males and females in a certain sense. So all these things go together. So there are 3 ways that a woman can determine when she's exited from the fertile days. One is the fertile mucus dries up. It has no purpose anymore. So the dry sensation that a woman had in the first part of the month, she also has in the 3rd part of the month. Her temperature goes up when she ovulates, and it stays up for the rest of the month, the whole rest of the month, until she starts her menstrual cycle. So once that temperature has gone up for about 3 days, to make sure that the reason is her hormones and not something else, she will be in a period where she can't get pregnant. So if a woman and there's a change in her cervix. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so what this tells us, if a woman and her husband decide that it's not a good idea to have another child right now, and we're supposing they're in communication with God about this, they're praying about it, and God agrees with them. Yeah, you've got 3 kids under 5, you're tired to the bone, yeah, maybe you want to hit the pause button for a while, right? Or you're taking care of an elderly parent, or you're taking care of a handicapped child. You have certain configuration, or the husband doesn't have a job, or your health is not good. It wouldn't be a good idea to have a child. You take a look at the church. Okay, have sexual intercourse in the first phase and the 3rd phase, but not the middle phase. And we can determine with some remarkable degree of accuracy when that is. Okay. How do the chemical contraceptives work? Well, they work basically by suppressing hormones. They are synthetic forms of the hormones that a woman has in her system. But they are synthetic, for they're phony. They're phony fertile hormones. So they're trying to deceive the body into what? They're trying to deceive the body into thinking it's pregnant. Because when a woman is pregnant, she can't get pregnant. So she has in her body the hormones that she has when she's pregnant that suppress her hormones. Pregnancy hormones suppress the production of fertile hormones, because there's no point in producing fertile hormones if you're already pregnant. Again, it's the progesterone that your body's going to be producing, because progesterone sustains a pregnancy. It doesn't need those other hormones because they're preparing the body for pregnancy, but it's already pregnant. So it doesn't produce those hormones while it's pregnant. So those suppressing the hormones prevent ovulation. If you suppress all those hormones that cause ovulation, you can't get pregnant. If there's no egg there, you can't get pregnant. Right? It changes the viscosity of the mucus. The same hormones that cause the body to ovulate are the same hormones that create this fertile mucus. But it makes it not the kind of mucus that will help get the sperm to the egg. It changes its viscosity. It prevents the sperm basically from meeting the egg. There may be an egg. Women do ovulate when they're on contraceptives because they're not really pregnant. So the fertile hormones are really still trying to pump up, but the synthetic hormones are trying to shut them down. Well, sometimes your fertile hormones especially forget to take it a day or take it 3 hours outside of the 3-hour window when you need to take it every day. You may, in fact, your fertile hormones might kick in. You could ovulate, but the mucus is not of the right viscosity to carry the sperm to meet the egg. Another way is it prevents the implantation of a newly conceived embryonic human being in the mother's endometrium. Again, if a woman does conceive, she has this new little human being. She has ovulated. For some reason, the sperm managed to get there, had enough hormones to ovulate, enough hormones to create the fertile mucus. Now the human being little sperm has gotten up to meet the ovum. It's been fertilized. It travels down the fallopian tube, tries to implant in the uterine wall. But again, you've been taking hormones that suppress the development of the endometrial wall because your body is being told it's already pregnant because of the synthetic hormones. But your own hormones have broken through enough, and now you just have what's called a thin endometrium. And the new little human being travels down and tries to implant, but it gets flushed out because there's not a thick enough endometrium in which it can implant. Just by the way, a major cause of infertility in women is because of sexually transmitted diseases. They too cause scarring in the uterine and in the fallopian tubes, right? You get lesions from these diseases. When they heal, there are scar tissues left. So when the new little human being tries to implant, sometimes it will hit scar tissue and it will be flushed out. Ectopic pregnancies have skyrocketed since contraception because contraception doesn't protect against sexually transmitted diseases. So when a woman gets a sexually transmitted disease, she can get that lesion not only in the uterus but also in the fallopian tube. So now when the new little human being is trying to travel down the fallopian tube, it runs into a scar tissue and it implants in the fallopian tube. It doesn't mean that every woman who has an ectopic pregnancy had a sexually transmitted disease or was infertile. Was promiscuous. There's all sorts of reasons you can have blockage in your fallopian tube. One is ovarian cysts. And the new little human being can be blocked from traveling down the fallopian tube to get into the endometrium by the blockage of a cyst. But anyway, so all these sexual things are all tied together. So what the hormones do basically is try to make a woman's body think it's pregnant. And if a woman is pregnant, she can't get pregnant. The problem is she isn't pregnant. So her body is still naturally producing the fertile hormones and fighting with the synthetic hormones. All right? Impact on a woman's health. The common side effects of contraception are increased irritability, increased propensity to depression, weight gain, and a reduced sex drive. And I've always said every woman I know wants to be more irritable, more prone to depression, to gain weight, and to have a reduced sex drive. So we have the thing for you. It's called the pill. All right? Any chemical contraceptive will do this. And I'm sure every man in this room wants the woman he's dealing with to be more irritable, have a greater propensity to depression, to gain weight, and to have a reduced sex drive. We have that. All right? We can do that for you if that's what you want. Right? It's a bizarre thing that the very thing that women are taking to enable them to have sex at the same time reduces their desire to have sex. You see, there's kind of cognitive dissonance here when I hear that, right? Something's not lining up. The connection between contraception and breast cancer has become very well established. The Journal of the Mayo Clinic has published a key article in its October 2006 issue entitled Oral Contraceptive Use as a Risk Factor for Premenopausal Breast Cancer, a meta-analysis authored by Chris Kalenborn, a doctor, and others. This is a group called the Committee on Women, Population, and the Environment. Right? You can find that on the internet. It says, for instance, we're going to talk about just a few of the contraceptives. Promoting Norplant and Depo-Provera to women because the contraceptives prevent pregnancy in the long term and do not require daily user-controlled dosage or partner cooperation, no partner cooperation, which NFP requires, prioritizes these factors over women's overall health and minimizes the negative side effects associated with using these methods. By minimizing these potentially serious side effects, we are basically told that we as women are not entitled to sex and health too. The message from providers and policymakers is that if you have sex, you must pay the price in unwanted pregnancy or debilitating side effects. Right? The whole industry is selling contraceptives to women and absolutely minimizing the side effects. If you watch that, what was the movie that just came out that on abortion? Unplanned. Again, Abby Johnson in Life and in that movie, she got a chemical abortion, and she was told that there might be a little pain, and then we saw her 3 days of absolutely agonizing pain and bleeding. And she later was telling girls herself when she gave it out to them, it causes minimal pain, though she lived through 3 days of hell with that, and that's what's being done, all right? Depo-Provera users can experience nausea, depression, extreme weight gain, osteoporosis, loss of sex drive, delayed return to fertility or sterility, headaches, hair loss, acne, weakness, nervousness, and an increased risk of breast, cervical, and uterine cancers. Depo-Provera users also experience irregular, heavy bleeding. Norplant users can experience severe headaches, depression, nervousness, change in appetite, extreme weight gain, hair loss, nausea, dizziness, acne, blah, 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 blah. There's a connection between Norplant use and stroke and heart attack. Norplant interrupts a woman's menstrual cycle. About 82% of Norplant users experience irregular, usually heavy bleeding for the first year that can last for months on end. Others do not have their periods or experience irregular spotting. A popular contraceptive is called Yaz, and the side effects associated with Yaz are blood clots, high blood pressure, breast cancer, and heart attack. Right? Understandably, there are lawsuits. As of January 2016, Bayer had agreed to pay $2.04 billion to settle over 10,000 claims for blood clot injuries. Ever hear that? Headlines, news? If this were aspirin, right, this would be all over the news. It'd be all over the news that it's having these side effects, or some pill for allergies. If it had this kind of payout and claims, it'd be all over the news. Users of Yaz and Yasmin say they've suffered from heart, gallbladder, and blood disorders. Thousands of injuries and more than 100 deaths are connected to the drug's severe side effect. Okay? These are some wonderful little pamphlets that you can find for the Breast Cancer Institute, Breast Cancer Prevention Institute, Breast Cancer Risks and Prevention, and then it's not okay for him to take steroids. Why is it okay for her? That's actually inspired by one of the sort of observations I made, that if a boy came in and wanted steroids to build up his muscles to get the girls, the doctor would say, I'm not going to give you steroids, that's bad for you. Join an athletic club, lift weights. I'm not giving you steroids. A girl comes in and says, I need contraception so I can have sex with my boyfriend. He gives her a prescription for steroids. That's basically what these synthetic hormones are, different kind of steroids. And you say, why do we say for her to be sexually available, she has to harm her body? For a boy, you don't give it to him because it's bad for him, right? I'm going to just skip some of that. We've talked about sexually transmitted infections. It's incredible to me that 1 out of 4 Americans is believed to have contracted an STD. And an estimated, get the number, 65 million Americans are now living with an incurable STD. You've seen some of the commercials where he has an STD and he wants to have sex with her, wants to be in a relationship. And it talks about, well, we're handling it with drugs, and if I have an outbreak, we will abstain. And that's interesting. You could abstain so you don't transmit a disease, but you can't abstain because it's not a good idea to have a baby, or you can't abstain because you're not married yet. But isn't it? It's the gift that keeps on giving. How would you like to say, I'd like to marry you, but you have to understand I have an incurable sexually transmitted disease. It will enter into every sexual decision we make for the rest of our lives, right? Unbelievable, right? This is what some of you are waiting for. This book called The Decline of Males, written in 1999 by Lionel Tiger. I have a whole talk called Hormones Are Us, which this portion is basically from. My mother told me not to make fun of people's names, but Lionel Tiger is kind of irresistible because he studies animal behavior to explain human behavior. Mr. Lionel Tiger does. And many of his books, he's collaborated with Robin Fox, who also studies animal behavior to explain human behavior. Anyway, back in 1999, he said it's almost impossible to overestimate the impact of the contraceptive pill on human arrangements. The pill has had a remarkable, defining, and underestimated impact on the communities in which it was introduced in the 1960s. It was not just another drug to correct a temporary physical illness. Instead, it was a powerful preparation given to healthy people on a daily basis. It did not repair a disability, but promoted robust social life, meaning promiscuity. Please, it has affected sex between men and women, the core relationship that has guided human evolution and continues to preoccupy people more than half their lives. So he asks these questions. Does chemical contraception affect social behavior, not only of females, but of males? He's an anthropologist. He studies how human beings behave, largely by comparing it to animal behavior. Would males be as eager to copulate with females made chemically pregnant by contraception as with those who might produce offspring? Was chemical pregnancy a turnoff? Would Mother Nature show preference for traditional connections over those that were recreational in effect? All right. Types of contraception that are used. And just give you a sense of it. Again, 98% of women have used contraception at some point. At any given time, 31%, and this is reduced, this is going down, so let me use the light blue, are 2017 numbers. It's interesting, and compared to 2002 numbers. I'm kind of amazed. But the pill has reduced from 31% of women using the pill to 22%, largely because it's so bad. Women won't use it because it's physically bad for them. What I want to look at is the pill. 22% of women are using the pill. 4% are using the implant. 2% are using the ring or a patch. 4% are using the injectable. All right, so that adds up to close to 30% or so, somewhat under 30%, are using some form of a chemical contraceptive. We see the ages of 15 to 44. As the younger women are using the chemical contraceptives, the older ones are using either withdrawal or have been sterilized. So it's the women in their courtship days that are using the chemical contraceptives. And these chemicals really change their interaction with males, right? Monkeys and contraception, what does this mean? Lionel Tiger and his team observed a tribe of monkeys on an island right after the pill was introduced, because he thought they're going to have a huge impact again on human behavior. And what they did was they gave shots of Depo-Provera to the three monkeys that the alpha monkey, they called the alpha monkey, no offense to anybody here, should he be named Austin, was named Austin. He was the alpha monkey. He could choose his sexual partners. He chose 3 females to be his partners. They gave them shots of Depo-Provera, and Austin was no longer interested in sex with them, but chose other females from the tribe to be his sexual partners. Males are much more attracted to women who are in their fertile phase than to women who are not, all right, females who are not. Then they gave shots of Depo-Provera to all the females of the tribe, and all the males stopped having sexual intercourse with the females, and started engaging in inappropriate, whatever inappropriate behavior is for a monkey, play with other males, all right? Da-dum-da-dum, all right? Da-da-da-dum, all right? Now, oh yeah, you're gonna like this one, all right? I was in Kansas one and giving this talk and talked about how males are more attracted to women when they're in their fertile cycle. He comes up to me and says, listen, he's a girl, he called me girl. Listen, girl, he said, in Kansas, we don't need studies to show us that. He said, if you put a cow a mile away from a bull and she's fertile, the bull will find a way to get there. Even it means going over fences, you see. So this is a male deer trying to find his female. This happens sometimes to males on their way to females. He said they will get there no matter what. If the female's fertile, he gets there a mile away, he said, because of what are called pheromones. Men and women exchange sexual hormones through what are called pheromones, and we receive them through the sense of smell. Now, they don't have a detectable fragrance, but it's through our olfactory nerves that we are receiving these hormones. So they did what he reports on what they call the T-shirt test. And they had two groups of males, one that they considered evolutionarily desirable and the other not, more or less losers, lazy, couch potato kind of guys, and guys who were ambitious, aggressive, athletic, etc. They had two groups of men wear shirts. And then at the end of the day, they had two groups of females smell those shirts. One was a contracepting group of women, and the other was not contracepting. And they asked them on the basis of smell to say which males they would prefer to date with and possibly have a relationship with. The non-contracepting women chose the evolutionarily desirable males, and the losers chose, the contracepting females chose the losers. Think about it. Wow. Yeah, wow. Women come up to me and says, well, that explains why my daughter's stuck on that loser, right? She's using a chemical contraceptive. Or a mother will say, that explains why my wonderful young son is not seeming to attract the girls, because they're all contracepting, and they prefer losers to good men, right? There's reasons for this, but we'll maybe get to them. They now have these pheromone parties, where people bring in a piece of clothing that they wore, and you can smell it. And then you say, I'd like to meet number so-and-so, right? Because that's the person you're attracted to, and it actually does work. I don't know if it works it won't work as well being deceptive if you're contracepting, obviously. But there's something there. So let me explain this. This is amazing. Ladies, tell your daughters this, all right? The magic of sexual attraction. They say female chemical messengers known as pheromones may help dupe men into thinking plain women are more attractive and beautiful women are less attractive than they actually are. Pheromones, the colorless, odorless chemical signals given off by the body, are thought to affect behavior in both animals and humans at a subconscious level. This test is fascinating. Back in 1998, we've gotten much more evidence since then. It just keeps piling up. Right, but they showed a group of males, human males, pictures of supermodels, and they asked to rate their attractiveness. Of course, they were off the charts. Then they put something soaked in female fertile hormones in the room that the men would be perceiving through their olfactory nerves, and showed them pictures of ordinary women, ordinary-looking women. They found those women more attractive, right, more attractive. Now, we are suppressing the very thing that makes ordinary women attractive to men. We're using contraceptives, and we're dressing very immodestly. And it's a woman who smiles and has a fertile cycle that is much more likely to attract a male, except one who just wants immediate raw sex, than the supermodel, immodestly clad female. I could see this at the University of Dallas when I was a professor there. My office was on the third story of a building that looked down over the quad, where everybody had to pass through for any exchange between classes. And we had a lot of really chaste young women there, raised in good households. They dressed modestly, very feminine, not contracepting. And then we had, the girl that was raised in our culture that is just sexually available to males and wants to advertise that all the time. The good guys were just like bees around the modest young women. They just couldn't get enough of the company, just basking in the femininity and the charm of these young women. And the women loving it. And then there'd walk a woman across campus who was advertising her wares in one way or another. And The bad guys would just get a whole eye full of it. The good guys, back here, that's not, I don't want to go there. It was very obvious. It was just absolutely obvious what was going on. All right, the face of fertility. Women, why do men find women who are near ovulation more attractive? Women are most fertile a week after their period begins. Not a week, honestly, but 11 days. They don't even know anything here. At this time, they experience changes in their psychology, behavior, and physiology that are akin to changes we see in non-human primates. A new study suggests that women's faces also get redder, but men can't see it. A woman should do this. She should take, now we have these selfies, take a picture, a woman who's going for fertile cycles, take a picture of yourself each day of the month, and you will find that you are most attractive during your fertile phase. That's when you might feel not so great, but you look great, and you are transmitting something to males. Women's choice of men goes in cycle. Women are attracted to more masculine-looking men at the most fertile times of their menstrual cycle, psychologists have shown. During the less fertile times, they choose men with more feminine-looking faces. These are seen as kinder and more cooperative, but less strong and healthy genetically. During the fertile phase, men want to have a relationship with a masculine man. During the infertile phase, when she's not facing pregnancy, she's happy enough with the less masculine man. Scientists say the hormones in the oral contraceptives suppress a woman's interest in masculine men and make boyish men more attractive. Although the change occurs for just a few days each month, it may have been highly influential since the use of the pill began more than 40 years ago. If the theory is right, it could partly explain the shifting in taste from macho 1950s and 60s stars such as Kirk Douglas and Sean Connery to the more wimpy and androgynous stars of today, such as Johnny Depp and, Russell Brand. Scientists have long known that a woman's taste in men changes over her menstrual cycle. During the few days each month when women are fertile around the time of ovulation, they tend to prefer masculine features and men who are more assertive. Contraception also kills our sex drive. When women on the pill were tested, levels of a chemical which wipes out testosterone, the source of a woman's sexual drive is actually testosterone. But when we're taking the pill, it suppresses our production of testosterone. Women on the pill were tested. Levels of a chemical which wipes out testosterone were found to be 7 times higher than in those who had never taken it. Most worryingly, even when those women who were not on the pill but had taken it in the past, they had levels up to 4 times higher of a chemical that wipes out testosterone than those who had never used it. Past studies had suggested taking the pill could dampen a woman's sexual desire, but that if she came off it, her libido would return within a month. Dr. Goldstein, former director of the Institute for Sexual Medicine at Boston University, Massachusetts, said that while his research seemed to suggest the effects could be permanent, more investigations were needed. So taking a pill might permanently, I don't know for how long, might permanently reduce a woman's sex drive. What man wants a wife with a permanently reduced sex drive? So, I love this cartoon. Yes, I admit it. I do look at other men. But if it makes you feel any better, I don't find them attractive either. All right? She's on the pill. All right? I think that's what do we have? All right. Pardon me? Yes, I'm done.
No. It's just that we have about 15 minutes before your red car comes.
Yes, I'll be done. Thank you. Thank you. I have to get back this afternoon, so I'm rushing from here to the airport. I was in Dallas on Wednesday, and I'm going to be in San Francisco on Sunday. So if you wonder why things aren't moving quite as smoothly as I'd like up here, that's the reason. I'm retired, so. All right. The secular world, secular women are starting to get it, all right? This is a book out there. Some of you know Ricki Lake, the TV talk show lady. She's caught on to this, and she's trying to make a movie of the dangers of chemical contraceptives, based on a book by this woman, Holly Krieg Spall. She took the pill for 20 years, and when she went off of it, she found out she was a very different person. all of the depression, the anxiety, migraines, etc. She had no idea they were all associated with taking the pill. So she's trying to alert women to pay attention to what it is they're taking. And that's one thing. Again, this young man that I love so much who's having sex with his girlfriend, I asked him, what is she taking? He didn't know. It was the Nexoplano or something, Plano 9. I'm just learning about this. It's a new one, relatively speaking, about 7 or 8 years. And I looked it up for him, and I sent him the links to the pages of what says the side effects. She's already had to have it removed once and replaced because it made her so sick. Right? So I'm saying if you love her, this is the sort of thing you monitor. You have to go on and look up and see what are the side effects, are there lawsuits, et cetera, and ask. I had a priest who, when he would prepare people for marriage, couple for marriage, he would use the insert on the contraceptive pill, which has 33 contraindications for using the pill. And he would ask the young man, after he read them aloud, with her sitting right beside him, whether he would take such a pill. And he said, no, too many bad side effects. He said, are you going to let her continue to take it? And she's looking at him, you know. I once gave a talk at Eastern Michigan, no, it doesn't matter. One of the major universities in Michigan, and they're just started a Knights of Columbus group, and they invited me to speak on campus, which is an act of great courage, honestly. And they put some fascinating posters around the campus, and one of them was to advertise my talk. And one of them was, do men who love women let them use contraception? Come hear this talk. It was just, everybody stand and read that. Do men who love women let them use contraception? What can that mean? But they got it. They got it. That if you love a woman, you would not let her use a contraceptive. Right? It's not healthy for her. Natural family planning. I say, contraception is an insult to women. She says, I'm sorry, when I have sex, I may get pregnant. Sure, I'll be glad to mess with my body to correct this humiliating and inconvenient feature of my sex. We're acting as though there's something wrong with our bodies. God made a mistake. He made us fertile for 7 days a month, or how many? We don't like that. We can do better. It's treating our fertility as though it were a defect or a disease, when it's a healthy condition. As we've said, even those hormones help us perceive reality and the perception of what quality a guy is. It helps us. That's a good internal mechanism to have. Now, the church does not say you have to have as many children as you can possibly bear. The little old woman lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. The church does not want you to get to that point. I've mentioned this site before. Very good information on natural family planning. Effectiveness rate. Pregnancy rates of couples using NFP have depended on the motivation of couples. And this was back in 1993. We're better at all these things. We even have monitors that can show when a woman is pregnant. It works by saliva, even the sweat on your skin. You can wear like a Fitbit, and it will tell you when you're in your fertile phase. Increasingly, studies show that rates equivalent to those with other contraceptive methods are readily achieved in the developed and developing world. Where people are out of control sexually, we're the ones who have sexual control. Blah, blah, blah. I don't mean that, of course. That was sarcastic. Indeed, a study of 19,843 poor women in India had a pregnancy rate approaching 0. Nearly 20,000 women were studied using natural family planning, and it had a rate of failure approaching 0. Natural family planning is cheap, efficient, costs nothing. All you have to do, you can have some beads. You don't even need to have a chart of any kind, or you can do it on your phone now. You can have a little charting that you can do on your phone. It doesn't cost anything. All right? Natural family planning is cheap, efficient, you don't have to go to the doctor all the time. You don't have to get meds for your anxiety or for your migraines. You just use NFP. It doesn't have side effects and may be particularly acceptable and efficacious among people in areas of poverty because they understand fertility cycles in animals and in the farm. They understand fertility cycles. They understand when you plant a seed at one time it grows, another time it doesn't. Right? It costs nothing. instead of the billions of dollars that we're paying to drop defective condoms on third world countries and pump them up with pills that are bad for them, that they don't have the drugs that can later help them with what their side effects are. It's a wonderful little guide. A lot of people don't like natural family planning. It requires abstinence. That's hard, especially for people who have had sexual intercourse before marriage. Those who have been chaste before marriage don't have as hard a time because they've learned sexual mastery by being able to be with each other for a year, 2 years, whatever, not having sex. So they've learned how to really enjoy each other's company without having sex. So the Simca Fisher's wrote a really interesting book called The Sinner's Guide to Natural Family Planning. The benefits of NFP, no bad physical side effects. Men, you are with a woman who's not depressed, at least not from her chemicals, not irritable, at least not from her chemicals, all right? Not gaining weight, at least not from the chemicals, all right? And doesn't have reduced sex drive, at least not from the chemicals, all right? You got a better chance here. It requires mutual sacrifice. As I mentioned, women greatly admire their husbands who are willing to abstain, and they believe they have themselves a very special man. It enhances communication between spouses and strengthens marriages. Couples talk a lot about why they've decided not to have more children, because if they were open to a new child, they could have sex all month long. People like that, all right? So if you're tired of the abstinence, you start saying, well, why are we abstaining? Why did we decide it wasn't a good idea to have another child? And the answer might be, well, whatever was the obstacle, that's gone, right? And if God sends us another one, that's fine. It strengthens couples' relationship with God. People with contracept are basically saying they resent the way that God made the body, that he made a defective body. And there's no harm to society. People using NFP almost never divorce, and there's nothing better for a culture than intact families, nothing better for a culture. Natural sex. I want to talk about the difference between chemical sex and natural sex. Natural sex is with someone you love, all right? You shouldn't be having sex with someone and not using contraception unless you love that person. You should love anybody you have sex with. Natural sex is with someone you love. You love them so much you want to make a lifetime commitment to them. And you're open to having children with them. And you do. And you find great joy and meaning in being faithful spouses and good parents. And it's chemical-free. All right, last slide. Oh, good for the environment. All right. I got to go meet my ride. Okay, but a guaranteed, these are what I tell when I was teaching at the University of Dallas. My seminarians aren't getting married, but I can tell them this because they can tell it to others. Guarantees to a lasting marriage. The study shows, I mentioned earlier, if you commit to a religion, share it, and practice it, you have a much higher expectation of having a long-lasting marriage. No sex before marriage. You should embrace what's called secondary virginity if you've had sex before marriage. Women who have never had sex before marriage have an 80% chance of not getting divorced, all right? Having a stable relationship, 80%. I tell girls this. As I said, my students hate divorce. That's the selling point. You're much less likely to get divorced if you don't have sex before marriage. You don't contracept. I think there's abundant evidence that contributes to divorce. And you tithe. Now, this is where I get the priests on my side. But I really do think it's a part of it. Giving 10% of your time and money to God means, again, you're not inner directed, you're outer directed, and you know how to make a sacrifice. And if you'll notice in most parishes, the couples who are using NFP and have a lot of kids, they're the ones that are most ready to help set up for any event and volunteer for this, and are generous within the limited means that they have. They're different kind of people. They may be different. It may be because they're different kind of people why they chose NFP, but it also might be that by using NFP, they become different kind of people. All right, thank you so much for your patience. And I'm sorry I have to run, but it's been great fun. Thank you. Thank you.